Hej och hjärtligt välkomna ska ni vara till Investor Update. Idag med gruvbolaget Arctic Minerals. Arctic Minerals VD Peter George kommenterar idag de metallurgiska resultaten från Henneviken samt betydelsen av det i Sverige och Norge nyligen införda nationella mineralstrategierna och dito lagarna. Ni som tittar live kan som alltid interagera med management och det gör ni genom att ställa era frågor i chatten. Vi kommer att hantera frågorna efter den formella presentationen. Och hinner du inte få svar på din fråga så får du vända dig till bolaget och du hittar dem lättast på deras hemsida. Med hänsyn tagen då till den internationella publiken så kommer presentationen nu att fortsätta på engelska. Hello Peter, how nice to see you in the flesh again.
Yeah, lovely to see you again, Carly.
You had a busy and, in my opinion, rather successful first 6 months. So let me be a little bit cheeky and say, is this the theme going forward for the next coming months?
Well, you know, it has been a busy 6 months. It's always a little bit quiet during the summer period, but we've been very busy in the background doing a lot of work on the geophysics and the drilling, of course. But I think our next 6 months is going to be even busier, to be fair.
Well, take us through the presentation.
Right, thank you very much. Obviously, you probably won't be able to see that, but that's also on our website. So just quickly, you would have seen, well, a number of you would have seen this slide before. So just talking about the executive summary, the board and management and our advisory committee. We've been extremely fortunate to attract some very good people to the company in recent years, and I think even mentioned in the quarterly update. We've had the likes of Ewan Spets come over and join us as CFO in recent times. Bino Drummond come on as our Chief Sustainability Officer, and of course our well-established board as well. And our timing is very good. We're focused on the critical metals, the copper especially. I think it's fair to say that there's been a massive push around the world, not to say the least in the EU, to get the supply chain for the critical metals under control. And I think that our timing is perfect for what it is that we're doing. So just quickly, again, these are a couple of old slides just to talk about where we are and what projects we have. So we have 4 projects today, 2 advanced projects. Our flagship project being the Hennes Bay project down in Dalsland in southern Sweden. The Bidjovagge project, which is over in Finnmark in Norway. Used to be the flagship project for the company before we got involved. I've been quite vocal in basically it's had a number of issues that we're trying to resolve, but I'll come back to that in a little bit more detail in the coming slides. Of course, we also have our I guess you could call them secondary projects, being at Swan Lake and Kusi. Not a great deal of work happening in Finland on the Kusi project, but Swan Lake been very busy, not perhaps in the last few months, but extremely excited, especially given its location sitting in between the Aitik and Lava projects. So I guess this being an activities report, so we'll focus predominantly on what we've been doing at Hennes Bay, which has been the majority of the work this year. I guess this slide here is just really to sort of demonstrate a roadmap. I talk about this a lot without necessarily being too concrete in things. The further we go out in time, the harder it is to be concrete on dates. But I'm quite comfortable at this point in time that we're aiming for a 2030, 2031 decision around construction. Of course, there's quite a few milestones and steps involved before we can get to that particular point. We came out during the year committing to trying to get our exploitation concession submitted by the end of next year, which of course is going to require us to also do preliminary economic assessments and an awful lot of work on the baseline studies from the environmental and cultural aspects of what's happening in Hennes Bay. So I guess that's the main crux of what we've been doing, as well as of course the drilling, but I'll come into that. Just a bit of a recap on Hennes Bay itself. So we have our starter resource, as I often refer it to, the 55 million tonnes at Hennes Bay. And I call it I call it a starter resource because it really is only the beginning. 55 million tonnes in its own right is a significant project. We did the underground conceptual study, which demonstrated that there's a 3 to 4 million tonne per annum room and pillar mine there for at least 10 to 15 years. In my view, I want to get this up to being over 20 years worth of production, potentially even a higher production rate, but that's going to be very dependent upon us being successful with the drill rig. Already nearly 450,000 tonnes of copper contained in the ground, 37 million ounces, or just over a tonne of silver sitting there in the ground today. Everything sitting within the inferred category, of course. We do have areas of the resource which are higher, we have a higher density of drilling, so we are probably not too far away from being able to call a significant portion of that indicated. But there's a DP2 or drilling program 2 and 3, which will come in later, will help with regards to that. Again, at the 55 million tonnes, it's really only the start. We've got 1.8% copper, 40 grams per tonne silver, 17 kilometres away at surface. This is a big system, not too dissimilar to the copper schiffer that they have down in Poland and Germany. Of course, again, we need to be able to demonstrate that with drilling. We've done a lot of work in the last year on our MMT survey, so our geophysical survey, that new technique that's come out of Canada, very successful, and we've demonstrated that we have a much larger target area than the initial MRE at Dingelvik. But again, I'll come into that. Dalsland itself, it's an area. It's very sparsely populated for where it is. We're only an hour and a half away from Gothenburg. It's in an area that it's so well positioned with respect to infrastructure that I talk about this sometimes with some of my Australian friends, and they can't believe we've got a high-speed electrified railway. We have ports sitting there within Lake Vänern that are already handling concentrates, for example, from the zinc groove and mine. We've got heavy haulage roads running over the top of the property. We have 98% fossil-free power, with nuclear, hydro, wind power, and of course a whole heap of fresh water sources that we've got access to within the area. So, and of course we've got an overcapacity of copper smelters within Europe, screaming out for good high-quality copper concentrate. So on the resource expansion side, this is where we've been doing a lot of work. So we announced this year that our phase 1 diamond drilling program, or DP1 as we call it. So that's a 4,000 metre drilling program. We're at the end of June. We were about 2,905 metres completed. Yes, we did shut the drills down for a couple of weeks to give the drillers a well-earned Swedish holiday, but they're back at work now. So our expectation is that we will complete that DP1 this month, and then we hope to get some results out to the market as soon as we can after that. But that's, in my world, looking at the way it's going, that the drilling has been going extremely well. We've obviously I can't give any indications yet because we don't have the assays back, but visually they look extremely good and are meeting our expectations, if not exceeding them. So I'm looking forward to giving those results in the coming months. I spoke about the geophysics. So the MMT, or the airborne magnetotelluric survey that we did in 25, and we released the results from that earlier this year. That highlighted to us that we've got a 10 times larger target area than Dingelvik, where the 55 million tonnes sits. So that was extremely exciting for us, a real game changer to have that technology available to us. So we committed to doing another MMT survey. So that's actually just completed now. So we should get the results for that in the coming months. And there's that slide there that shows that we're doing 150 square kilometres. Both to the north and to the south, or a total of 150 square kilometres. We did initially 134 square kilometres in that area, and we got a very, very good reconciliation between the old drilling and the surveys. So it's going to be very useful for us in helping us to plan our drilling programs going forward. On the metallurgical side, again, we were very fortunate. We discovered some old investigations that were done into the metallurgy previously, but to have, which were going back into the 80s and 90s, basically with older technology than what is being used today. But they had some fantastic results up in the 90% and for copper recoveries, and between 75 and 85% for the silver. Producing a concentrate, above the 30% and over between 400 and 500. 30% for the copper and 400 to 500 grams per tonne for the silver, and with very few, if any, impurities, which is going to make it highly attractive for the very effective and clean European smelters. So I'm looking forward to that. We're actually doing a bit more work on that at the moment, which is going to be a requirement for our PEA. So hopefully we'll get some results out on that in the near future. And I guess we're also looking at ways that we can improve on the recoveries, especially in the silver range, which are already very good, but we realise that there is a potential there to improve that even further. The permitting program has commenced. Look, this is a very important part of the exploitation concession application, which we've committed to getting out by the end of next year, 2027. So a huge amount of work goes in there. It's an interesting when you talk to people, well, I guess I'm one of them now, that have been around in the industry for 30 odd years, on how much that has actually changed. You go back into the 90s and an environmental impact statement might have been about 5 pages worth of information, whereas today you'd be lucky to get away with 500 pages. So that just sort of gives you the indication of the amount of detail that we have to go into now to determine the baseline understandings of the flora, of the fauna, of the water, and then we obviously have to look at how are we potentially going to be impacting on all of that, and can we avoid it? Can we engineer out solutions so that we don't do it? How much is it going to cost for us to put everything back to close as possible as where we started? So this is a very important part of that process. We've just appointed some leading consultants. So we have a number of very well-known Swedish and international consultants that are now working for us, and I'm really pleased to be able to get them on board. I already touched on this, being the underground conceptual mining study, but it's important that I bring it up again because it is a part of the PEA that we hope to get out in the near future. And it really did demonstrate to me, as a mining engineer, how it is that we're going to mine this thing, and the potential upside that we've got. So, and a lot of that is sort of driving the decisions that are being made with regards to equipment selection, locations of processing facilities, tailings dams, etc., etc. So the forward work plan, obviously the baselines I just touched on. The resource expansion side, so phase 1, 4,000 metres, we'll have that completed soon, and with the main purpose of that being to convert the other 5 historically drilled out prospects to add them to the MRE. And maybe that's something I should just update for everybody as well. The original MRE at Dingelvik, that's 55 million tonnes. That was achieved with 10,000 metres worth of drilling. So we're now doing another 4,000 metres worth of drilling. We have 4,000 metres of additional drilling that we couldn't use in the current MRE because there wasn't enough density in the drilling. So you can just imagine, put the sums together, and you can realise that where we're trying to head. And I guess from my own personal perspective, where I want things to head to, this is all highly dependent upon success with the drill rig, but I'd like to be doubling our resource in the very near future, and potentially even doubling it again in the year or so after that. So this gives us a big resource, and when you consider that the underground conceptual study was 12 to 15 years worth of mining based on 55 million tonnes, well, you can keep doubling that number of length as well. So we're talking about a potentially multi-generational project here. For phase 2 drilling program, which I hope that we, depending upon the success of DP1, we hope to roll straight into that. So that's the main purpose of that, is to test the anomalies that we discovered from the MMT survey last year. So that 10 times larger target area that we're talking about. So Eric, our chief geologist, he's planned in and got all the approvals to start putting some holes straight into those. And the phase 3 part will be on converting the Dingelvik resource from inferred and up into indicated. And I think I hinted at the start, we already have quite a few areas within Dingelvik that have a very high density of drilling. So we probably already have a fair amount of that in the indicated as well, but this extra 8,000 metres of drilling will definitely take us over that, which is what we will need for our PEA. On the project development side, I keep talking about the PEA. Look, I could probably do a PEA today based on the information that we have, but I don't want to. I think that 10 to 15 year mine life is not quite enough yet. I want to get that up over 20 years. And that's the whole reason why we're doing this drilling programs at the moment. So if we can double the resource, we can double the life of the mine, I think we're in for an absolute winner. I don't think we necessarily need it from an economic perspective, because I'm quite convinced that we could demonstrate that already now. But I want to be able to demonstrate to the market that this is not just a 5-year project where we're going to come in, make a mine and then leave. This is going to be a multi-generational project. All right. So finishing off with Hennes Bay, then talking about our balanced portfolio. I quite often use this pyramid here. It's very important that the market understands, our investors understand that we're not a one-trick pony. We're not just about Hennes Bay. We do have Swan Lake, which I believe there's another copper porphyry project there just waiting to be drilled. We have all the indicators and the anomalies to suggest that. So we're looking forward to expanding on that project more into the near future. Bidjovagge, again, it's probably beyond, after Hennes Bay, I think it's probably one of the most exciting projects in the Nordics as well. I spent a lot of time probably killing the project, so we have no real value on it in our books. But I think there's a few things happening on the political side of things which is going to make Bidjovagge become very interesting. So don't discount it completely at this point in time. But I'll come back to that in the future. Just back to onto the corporate summary side of things. So 54.65 million shares on the register, a very clean register. I think the top 20 control something like 75-80% of the company. I know everybody. I'm a large shareholder myself. We're in this for the long term. We have a market capitalisation of around that 288 million SEK, a lot lower than where it should be. We're off our highs definitely, but I think the whole market in our space is off its highs. And then of course we have the Swedish summer where nobody's particularly interested in what's happening anyway. So one of the reasons why we're here to highlight to everybody that we've been extremely busy and doing a lot of work, and I think it's fair to say that I'm super excited about what's happened the last wee while, but going forward we're going to be extremely busy and lots of news flow coming out. And that's me.
Yeah. Thank you. Invigorating, as always. You referred to not a 5-year project and not a one-trick pony here, and I got a layman question here. So if we look at the main takeaway from the activity report that came this week, shows that Arctic have shifted from proving geological potential to actively testing for resource growth, EI. You're one step closer to production, that would be fair to say. So with that in mind, what kind of timelines would you have? You had one slide here, but I recall 2026, 2 drill rigs, 2027, 3 drill rigs, and the feasibility study 2028, although you said you could do that now. And you had also 2031. Would 2031 be the production, or?
Yeah, well, 2031 we're aiming for a decision on whether to go forward with the project or not. So for us to make that decision, we need to have a completed our PEA, our pre-feasibility study, our feasibility studies to a bankable level. We need to have received our exploitation concession and then our environmental permit as well. But it's a kind of like a bit of the chicken and the egg. Sorry to coin an Australian phrase, but which comes first? You know, we could potentially do the PEA now, but I want the resource to be bigger before we commit to what that is going to be, because for a whole bunch of reasons that I've already described. So, you know, you talked about number of drill rigs. At the moment, we just have the one drill rig. You know, if we decide to expand on that to speed up the particular process, that's really going to be highly dependent upon what happens with this DP1, and then we can make some decisions after that. And you know, growing that resource, trying to double that resource every 1 to 2 years. So, so I'm not sure if that answered your question, but there's a huge amount of work that goes in there. So yes, we are moving from being a purely exploration company into a development company, but we're doing both at the same time. We're in this sort of unusual situation where there's such a huge amount of upside in this ore body. And like I said, we've got ore body outcropping at surface 17 kilometres away with nearly 2% copper and 40 grams per tonne silver. We even know over at Stora Strand, you know, we've got up to 0.4 grams per tonne gold as well, which we haven't seen come into the Dingelvik part of the system yet. So it's the good thing about that is that it's you know, I think we're heading for a multi-100 tonne particular resource here. Granted, it's got to be proven by drilling, but it's not just one or the other. We're doing everything at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but if I then may be the devil's advocate there and saying, because I mean, so far the press releases that you have released, as it were, so you are on track. But one thing is that proven resources and possibilities have been much larger. So that's why, I mean, you're still on track, but you got more on your plate now than you had a year ago.
Yeah, well, that's fair, but that's what you want. You know, we're adding significant value as we go, and you know, we're yet to really see that being expressed in our share price yet. So it's for a whole bunch of different reasons, but none of which are really in our control. All we can really do is just keep working hard and producing all of these things, and each time we hit one of these particular milestones, we should get revalued significantly. And given that we haven't really moved in the last 12 months, I mean, we've had these spikes on the back of milestones, but then coming back, I'd blame external forces like what's been happening in Iran and those sorts of things instead of what we're doing. But you know, you talk purely about Hennes Bay in that respect as well, but you add in the other projects that we've got as well. If we can bring Bijavaggi back online, if we can continue to advance as quickly as what we are in Swan Lake, and we've got multiple projects all at different timelines, you know, and as a junior explorer / developer, we live and die on our ability to produce news to the market so that people can see, oh, okay, well, I can see where the company's going. You know, this is something I want to be a part of.
And if we get back to Hennes Bay and the copper silver project, which the activity report were focusing quite a lot on, and you refer here to going from inferred to indicated, and as I believe it, you've already started the process to get that indicated by additional infill drillings, if I understand. So how will that be reported to the market? Will that be when every infill drilling, as it were, will complete it, or will it be on a quarterly basis, quarterly activity reports? So what shall the market expect? Because this is fairly crucial, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's always a fine balance that you have to go. So I mean, I can't just go out there and let's throw 5 drill rigs at this, because I just simply don't have the cash to go off and do that. So, you know, we're being very conservative at this point in time. We have the one drill rig, try to make the 40 million that we raised early in the year last as long as we can, but then demonstrate, okay, well, we'll get this 4,000 metre program finished in August now, and then review all the results. Hopefully we'll get an updated MRE out of the back of that, and then we can go, okay, well, let's commit to that next phase. Let's start testing these particular anomalies. Are we in a very good position, you know, cash-wise? Can we put on extra drill rigs to speed up the phase 2? Can we go at the same time onto phase 3 while we're expanding moving from inferred into indicated into measured on the resource itself? So there's a lot of questions I can't really answer, but it will be left foot, right foot, and you know, we'll.
But if it's left foot, right
quickly.
foot, then watch this space because there will be press releases as you're going. Okay.
There'll be a lot.
And also in this report, you refer to the Swedish mining industry and the Norwegian mining industry. And if we just cook it down here to a layman's level here, EI my own, the Swedish new mining strategy in a nutshell, what is the main takeaway for Arctic there?
So I've got a couple of extra slides here, which a funny feeling you were going to ask me these questions. Look, I think that the changes to the Swedish mining industry from a political level are very good. You know, I've been working within the Swedish mining industry off and on for 30 years, and I don't think I've ever seen it quite like it is. You've got the left side of politics and the right side of politics, both in agreement that we need to have a healthy mining industry. You know, we put some things in place 40, 50 years ago, which has not been good for the mining industry. More from the exploration side of things, I think it's been okay for the Bolidens and the LKABs and the Lundins of the world, but I'm talking about outside of known deposits. So it's been very difficult to attract foreign investment into Sweden because of that, and I think these changes that are being made now with the new mineral strategy are fantastic. And I think even from my own or our own personal experience with dealing with Bergsstaten and then with SGU, it's comparing it today to 5 years ago, it's like chalk and cheese. It's so good to deal with these people now, with these departments, that I think they've got the right mix of people within them now that understand what is actually required. So I think for EBBA to come out a couple of weeks ago with the new mineral strategy, you know, I was really encouraged by that, and I think the government's even going one step further now. They're even talking about at the commune level, you know, which I think is the next thing that needs to be sorted out. We're doing a review into, well, how do we ensure that the communes will be looked after, and you know, a lot of these communes, especially the ones that we're dealing with in Dalsland, you know, they want to be involved, but it's very scary for them because they don't have the expertise in-house to necessarily deal with a mining company or an exploration company. But then on top of that, there's a lot of investments that are required, and the communes don't really get any money until people start paying taxes.
No.
So there's a big risk area there for the commune. So anything that we can do politically to help the communes is, from my point of view, is fantastic. So you know, I think that we're definitely heading in the right way.
And time is working in your favor there, I would say, because even the communes or the municipals leadership will realize how important mining would be for the future industry. And if we look at westwards to our neighbor Norway, what is the main takeaway from their new legislations?
Yeah, so Norway. Again, it's not as well advanced as Sweden, I wouldn't say, but that's just my own personal opinion. But it's different, right? So I've made no secret of the fact that we, the old Arctic has run afoul of how we cooperate with the indigenous peoples, the Sami people up in the north. So to that end, you know, we, as I've said numerous times before, you know, we're a new company from October 2024, new management, new owners, new board, and a completely different perspective from where we come from. You know, we're quite used to dealing with indigenous peoples in Australia, in Canada, in Africa. So coming in with a bit more of an open mind. So when the Norwegian government came out with their new Mining Act, I was actually quite encouraged by what I was seeing. But on top of that, I have been over to Oslo and talking to a lot of ministers over there, and that they are very keen for us to reopen Bidjavagi. But of course, they're standing back and saying, "But you know, you've created a bit of a problem up there for yourselves politically. You need to resolve that yourselves." Okay, fine. So we're working very hard in the background on that, and at the same time while working on the technical aspects of Bidjavagi. So I think with these changes to the Mining Act now, I'm actually really quite excited about what's the potential that we've got up there at Bidjavagi. So yeah, I think for our investors to watch this space.
So that's an interesting, because not only would you say that you have the authorities and the new rules and regulations with you, this is one of the first times that you are underlying the assets in Norway and Bidjavagi.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think 99% plus of the value in Arctic today is based around Hennes Bay, which is still one of the best projects in the Nordics, in our opinion. But Bidjavagi is not too far behind, and it's disappointing to see something that is so attractive from a technical perspective sitting there that can't do anything. But I think that the political winds are changing. Okay. So it's
and you had it on the same level in your pyramid as you had with Henneviken. Critical minerals. If we look at the Swedish government statement, they really underline critical minerals. But we haven't talking too much about critical minerals. Would you like to elaborate about that? Or?
Yeah. Well, I guess the EU Critical Raw Materials Act, which was put into action in I think it's 24. So this was a very important sort of stage for Europe, which was recognised quite early, that 50 years of underinvestment in the European exploration industry has resulted in we've got mining projects, but purely around old well-known deposits. Yep. So it's been very difficult to attract foreign investment into Europe because of decisions that were made 50 years ago, but not knocking those decisions. I think they were made for the right reasons. There was, quite a few accidents and mistakes that were made in the past, and the industry needed to clean up its act. But this was a worldwide phenomenon. So I saw exactly the same thing in Australia. But I think the difference in Australia is there's like 2,500 companies like Arctic, whereas over here we've got maybe 5. So there's a huge amount of pressure in the rest of the world to build up an entire industry around helping exploration and mining companies to meet society's requirements with regards to, and I think that started in Europe, it started with the EU Critical Raw Materials Act. I think we all sort of looked at it a bit suspicious as to what it meant. But what's changed now is that Sweden is a real forerunner in this respect, and they have taken the intent of that EU Critical Minerals Act and really encapsulated that within the new mineral strategy that we've got going forward. So to that end, you can really see that Sweden is trying to be a front runner with regards to Europe, to helping supply, to take back control of the supply chain within the country. Because we've learnt that during COVID that you can't really trust what's happening coming out of places such as China, and then of course the Ukraine war. You can't really trust what's happening coming out of Russia, and then of course there's a huge tariffs that are being put in by the US into Europe. So there's more and more focus on Europe to take care of itself. So the critical metals, the two biggest ones being copper and silver, and we've got both of them. Plus we have some others. So I think that things are definitely headed in the right direction, and politics always takes a little bit longer than what you would like it to do, but I think it's encouraging, extremely encouraging.
And finally, here, if we look at the press release on the quarterly update here, we had mentioned the flagship, which is Henneviken, but you also lifted up Norway, which I think is interesting. But if I look at under the headline strengthening management and organization, at least I can't help but notice the significant financial industry and capital markets experience that you added on to the geological and managerial and environmental competence that you have. So I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here and say, shall the stock market look at the composition here of the management and the skill set that you're more or less preparing yourself for a partnership, or are you for sale? Yeah.
Well, look, that's not an unusual question. So I think we'll answer that a couple of different ways. So firstly, for us to, as a junior exploration company, we live or die in our ability to put news out into the market, get the share price up, get the market capitalisation up, and then raise money through equity, selling shares within the market. So having guys like Johan and Joachim join us with a huge amount of expertise in that particular area, that was a focus that Robert and Eric and myself had quite early on. We wanted to find that expertise within country to be able to help us out with all of that. I make no qualms about the fact that Bob and I we're more technical and managerial. Obviously, we spent a huge amount of time in the finance world as well, so we've sort of got half a leg in each one. But then once you start moving into further along on that, I guess that through to that slide where we had the construction decision in 31, the company changes an awful lot. So the way that you raise money changes as well. So in the early days, you're really dependent upon the retail side of things. As you get further along, you become more involved on the fund sides of things, the larger banks, high net worths and those sorts of things. So there's a natural sort of progression there. Then the next phase, of course, is once we start getting into that construction decision, you're talking about large sums of money that are required to build plant and so on. So there are multiple ways that this can be done. We can partner up with somebody, as you suggested. Will somebody come along and write us a great big check to tell us to get out of the way and send the project? Well, that's always possibility as well. I mean, we have to do what is best for the shareholders, of course. But those decisions are into the future, and they're all on the table, even going forward and financing it through our own connections, which has been done before as well. So, but having guys like Johan and Joachim and Robert on the board and in the management, it seriously helps with that.
So you got your house in order.
Absolutely.
And anything on upcoming events here? What shall we look for apart from obviously geological presentations here?
Yeah. Well, a huge amount of news that we've got coming out. So we've got multiple projects progressing through, with the main focus being Hannes Bay, of course. So we've got the more metallurgical work being done at the moment. We've got drilling going on at the moment. We've got geophysical surveys coming up. So I'm hoping that 150 square kilometres is going to add another significant lift to our target areas. As far as events are concerned, we're coming to Stockholm again to do the Nordic Funds and Mines in October. Got a lot of foreign investors and advisors and banks coming over to take a look at it during that time. So I'd also encourage anybody who's in Stockholm and wants to come and have a look at us. We'll be there. We'll have a booth. We're co-sponsoring the event again this year, like we did last year, and it's just fantastic to meet with old and current shareholders and any new shareholders that want to come in and listen to the story.
And anyone who will participate there would get a temperature of the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Peter. Very interesting and educational. So you got your hands full. I take it, and we take it from there. So looking forward to seeing you here next time. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Och så säger vi tack till er som har tittat, ni som har skickat in frågor och ni som har ställt frågor. Så säger vi hej och på återseende.